Have you ever experienced what we might call the fluency freeze?
Oh, the fluency freeze. Yeah, that is a very real, very painful thing.
Right, like you're learning a new language, you have the flashcards down, you've watched all the
You
videos.
put in the hours.
Exactly. You know hundreds of vocabulary words on paper. But then you step out into the real world, someone walks up to you, looks you right in the eye, and asks a simple question like, how are you today?
In just nothing. Total blank.
Nothing. The brain completely blanks. You are standing there, physically unable to form a word. You're just like frozen.
Well, that sensation of freezing, it isn't a failure of intelligence. And it's actually not a memory deficit either, which surprises a lot of people.
Wait, really? It feels like you just forgot everything.
Right, it feels that way. But it is actually a massive, fascinating neurological traffic jam. Because on paper, the declarative knowledge is there. It's stored away in your long-term memory.
So I do know the words.
You do possess the vocabulary. You study the grammar rules. But the procedural execution, like the ability to actually retrieve, assemble, and articulate that knowledge in real time, it just completely stalls out under pressure.
It is so incredibly frustrating. It's like, I don't know, the connection between the brain and the mouth has just been entirely severed.
Yeah, the wires get crossed.
You're just smiling awkwardly, knowing that you literally know the answer, but the words refuse to materialize. So today's deep dive is an exploration of that exact phenomenon.
It's a great topic.
We are looking into the underlying mechanics of language acquisition, specifically focusing on how beginners manage to bridge that agonizing gap between passive, quiet understanding and active, real-time speaking.
Which is, arguably the most difficult leap in any learning process.
Yeah.
The transition from just receiving information to actually producing it on demand requires an entirely different set of cognitive muscles.
Right.
It is the leap from, reading sheet music alone in a quiet room to suddenly performing the song live on stage.
With a full band.
Exactly. With a full band while the tempo keeps changing on you.
That's a perfect way to describe it. So to understand how this leap actually happens, we have a phenomenal stack of sources to look at today.
We really do.
We are examining an extensive, multi-day transcript from a 30-day English-speaking challenge. It's called Speak Up Sessions.
Yeah, that transcript is gold.
It really is. It gives us this unfiltered front-row seat to the dynamic between a teacher, Masu, and a beginner student named Fizu.
And alongside this real-world interaction, we are also looking at a highly structured framework document. It's for designing beginner or A1 level educational content.
Yeah, so we get to see the architectural blueprint of how to teach a beginner safely, right alongside the messy, real-world construction of actually doing it.
Which is rare, by the way, having both a pedagogical framework and the raw transcript.
Usually you just get one or the other, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Normally, we only see the polished final product of a fluent speaker, or we are left reading some dry theory of how learning is supposedly going to happen.
Right. But here, we get to observe every stumble, every correction, and every psychological hurdle Fizu faces in real time over, well, an entire 30 days.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even look at the solutions and strategies provided in these sources, we really have to understand the core problem.
We have to diagnose it.
Right. Why does Fizu, and why do you, the listener, potentially freeze up when put on the spot? Throughout the entire 30-day transcript, Fizu is incredibly honest about his internal state.
Very vulnerable.
Yeah, he repeatedly mentions being nervous, feeling shy, and his brain just grinding to an absolute halt when Masu asks him a question, especially one that requires a multi-word answer.
And he actually articulates the root cause of this brilliantly in the very first session.
Oh, the translation thing.
Yes. Fizu explicitly tells Masu, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but he says, I understand a lot, but when I try to speak, I feel nervous. I speak very slowly because I'm translating in my head for my language.
Wow.
That single sentence, translating in my head, is the absolute diagnostic core of the fluency freeze. The translation trap. It's fascinating because intuitively, translating feels like you're doing the exact right thing.
Right. It feels safe.
Yeah, you hear an English phrase,
Yeah.
you immediately translate it into your native language so your brain can comfortably understand it. Then you formulate your answer in your native language because, that's where your thoughts live.
And then you try to translate that new answer back into English.
To speak it out loud, it's so many steps.
And doing that requires a monumental amount of cognitive energy. I
Right.
mean, you are essentially demanding that your brain do triple the mental work of a native speaker for every single exchange.
Triple the work.
You aren't just communicating, you are acting as a live, simultaneous interpreter for your own internal monologue.
Okay, let's think about this like a computer. If you have a computer and you try to run too many heavy applications at the exact same time,
Oh, sure.
like you've got heavy video editing software rendering, you're downloading massive files in the background, you have, I don't know, 50 browser tabs open, what happens to the machine?
It starts buffering.
Exactly. The internal fan whirs really loudly because it's overheating, the mouse gets all jumpy, and eventually, if you push it too hard with just one more click, it crashes, the screen freezes.
Total system failure.
Right. So is this what's happening to Fizu? Like, is this a lack of vocabulary knowledge, or is this literally a mechanical bottleneck in the brain's processing power?
The computer analogy is highly accurate for what is happening in the brain's working memory. It is a mechanical bottleneck.
So it's not a memory issue.
Not at all. When Fizu freezes, it is not because he has forgotten the word for water or morning. It is because his working memory, the part of the brain responsible for holding and manipulating information in real time, is completely maxed out by the translation process.
The RAM is full.
Exactly. The brain is frantically trying to run the native language comprehension software, the grammar translation software, and the English motor pronunciation software simultaneously.
Wow.
The system simply runs out of RAM and crashes.
Which perfectly explains why Fizu talks about being so physically exhausted after just a short conversation.
Oh, absolutely. That physical exhaustion is a documented neurological response to sustained high-load cognitive processing.
It's a real workout.
It is. And this brings us to one of the most critical symptoms of this cognitive overload, something that shows up constantly in the transcript, and it's so common for beginners.
What's that?
When the brain is that overloaded, it begins performing cognitive triage. It starts dropping the least essential packets of information just to keep the core message alive.
Okay, wait, what does that look like in practice?
Well, in language learning, this almost always manifests as dropping the ending sounds of words. Specifically, failing to pronounce the plural s or the past tense ed.
Yes. The dropped S and ed endings. This is all over the transcript.
Everywhere.
Fizu constantly says things like, I wake up instead of I woke up, or I brushed my teeth yesterday instead of brushed. It's like the sound just vanishes before it even leaves his mouth.
It vanishes because by the time the brain gets to the end of the word, the working memory buffer is already overflowing.
The computer is crashing mid-word.
Yes. Think about the microseconds of processing required here. The brain has to retrieve the core vocabulary word, say, brush. That alone takes massive energy for a beginner.
Right.
Then it has to recall the grammar rule.
Yeah.
Okay, this action happened yesterday, therefore it needs a past tense marker.
Right, the weed.
Then it has to physically send a signal to the motor cortex to tell the tongue and vocal cords to produce that specific T or D sound at the end of the word.
That is so much processing for one syllable.
It is. So if your brain is using 99% of its power just to retrieve the word brush and translate the surrounding sentence, it has 0% left to manage that final micromovement.
Wow.
So the AD ending is simply jettisoned.
The brain is literally deciding, look, the listener will understand brush yesterday well enough, drop the aid so we don't crash.
Exactly. It's an emergency survival mechanism.
That is wild. It's not that Fizu doesn't know the past tense rule. He knows it.
He definitely knows it.
The system is just dropping non-essential data packets to stay online.
And understanding that mechanism completely changes how Masu, the teacher, approaches the problem.
Because he knows he can't just yell at him to remember the ed.
Right. Masu's entire philosophy is designed to bypass the native language entirely to stop this triage from happening in the first place.
Okay, how?
The pedagogical goal is to link the real-world concept directly to the English word, bypassing the translation bottleneck. So if you see a dog, the goal is not to look at the animal, retrieve your native word for it, and then translate that to dog.
Right, that's 3 steps.
Exactly. The goal is to see the animal and immediately fire the neural pathway for dog.
You have to force quit those extra mental applications to free up processing power.
Yes, beautifully put.
Once you eliminate that internal translation step, the lag disappears, the buffering stops, and suddenly you have enough RAM left over to actually pronounce the ed and the s endings.
That is the ultimate mechanical goal, yes.
Right.
But getting the brain to actually do that requires an incredibly specific type of environment.
Which brings us to the second source we are exploring today. The architectural blueprint for designing beginner, or A1 level, educational content.
This is where it gets really structural.
Yeah, because if we know that the translation trap and cognitive overload cause this fluency freeze and cause these dropped endings, how do educators actually construct a learning environment that prevents the crash from happening in the first place?
Well, what's fascinating here is how strictly controlled the linguistic environment needs to be to prevent that cognitive overload.
Okay.
The source document outlines incredibly rigid rules for A1 content. You do not just walk into a room and start casually chatting with a beginner.
You don't just ask them about their day.
No, the framework mandates the use of simple, high-frequency, everyday vocabulary. But most critically, it dictates the strict use of subject plus verb plus object syntactic structures. SVO.
Subject, verb, object.
Yes, I drink coffee, she reads a book, he drives a car.
I have to admit, when I read that in the source, my first thought was, isn't that just toddler speak?
A lot of people think that.
Right. By restricting a grown adult like Fizu to I drink coffee, aren't we preventing him from actually expressing adult thoughts? How does forcing someone to speak like a child build advanced fluency?
The resistance to SVO is super common, but it misses the cognitive science of syntax.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Every time you add a complex clause, a prepositional phrase, or an idiom to a sentence, you are forcing the listener's working memory to hold multiple pieces of information in suspense before the meaning resolves.
Okay, I'm following.
If I say to a beginner, the coffee, which was brewed this morning by my roommate, is cold, your brain has to hold on to the coffee, process the entire roommate clause, and then finally attach to the state of being cold to the original subject.
Oh, I see. That's way too much to juggle.
For a beginner, that syntactic tree is too heavy. It causes an immediate crash.
Oh, I see. By limiting the sentence structure strictly to SVO, the brain doesn't have to untangle a complex web of grammar.
Exactly.
It knows exactly what is coming next in a perfectly straight line. Who did the action, what was the action, and what received the action.
Exactly. This structural predictability is a cognitive lifesaver. Because the architecture of the sentence is safe and utterly predictable, the learner's brain can take all of that freed up processing power and focus it entirely on vocabulary, retrieval, and pronunciation.
Oh, wow.
It gives Fizu the mental bandwidth to finally focus on pronouncing that tricky ed ending.
Because he isn't wasting energy trying to figure out where the verb is supposed to go.
Precisely.
They don't have to worry about the physics of the sentence. They just have to slot the right vocabulary words into the pre-built, sturdy structure.
Furthermore, the A1 framework dictates a very specific auditory environment.
Right, how the teacher actually sounds.
Yes. It requires a slow, clear, natural pace from the teacher, with distinct, brief pauses built in between sentences to allow for absorption.
The pause. Listening to Mesu in the transcript, that pause seems so simple. It's almost unnoticeable at first, but it is everything.
It's vital.
It's the exact moment the computer gets to save the file before moving on.
That brief silence is pedagogically essential. Human auditory processing takes time, especially when you're deciphering new phonemes.
New sounds.
Right. The pause gives the learner's working memory that critical fraction of a second to file the incoming information, clear the buffer, and prepare for the next auditory input.
Because if you don't pause...
Without that brief silence, the acoustic inputs just pile up on top of each other. The boundaries between words blur, and the learner is overwhelmed. They freeze.
And looking at Mesu's approach, it's not just about structuring the words correctly, it's about structuring the feeling in the room.
The emotional environment.
Yeah, the A1 framework strongly emphasizes a friendly, encouraging tone. Mesu embodies this perfectly throughout all 30 days. His tone is just relentlessly warm.
Very supportive.
When Fizu is struggling, Mesu is constantly jumping in with phrases like, that's exactly why we're doing this, and you're not alone, this is normal.
He is deliberately engineering psychological safety to further reduce cognitive load.
Yes, because if you are anxious, if you feel like you are being judged, your brain is busy running a background program scanning for social threats.
Which eats up your RAM.
Exactly. That takes up even more processing power. By aggressively lowering Fizu's defenses and soothing his anxiety, Mesu is literally freeing up more RAM in Fizu's brain to focus on the English language.
It is a masterful, simultaneous application of both cognitive and psychological frameworks. You create a simple, predictable linguistic structure so the brain doesn't get lost, and a warm, safe psychological structure so the brain doesn't panic.
So we have the environment set up perfectly, the cognitive load is managed, the psychological safety is established, but what is the actual physical exercise they use to build the fluency.
You have to do the work.
Right, because you can't just sit in a safe, quiet room and magically learn to speak a language. You have to physically do something.
You do. And according to the source material, the absolute core exercise of this 30-day challenge is a technique known as shadowing. Yes. The text details a daily, rigorous exercise where the student listens to a recording of 99 sentences and is instructed to repeat them immediately out loud.
99 sentences.
Every single day. And the instructions are very specific here. They are not supposed to just read them silently on a page.
Right.
They are not supposed to just listen and nod along. They must repeat them out loud, physically, mimicking the exact rhythm, speed, and intonation of the speaker.
Okay, I am going to push back on this because honestly, on the surface, repeating 99 basic sentences out loud sounds agonizingly boring.
It does sound tedious.
Isn't this just robotic parroting? Like we just talked about wanting to build real fluency so you can talk to someone at a coffee shop. How does mindlessly repeating I am learning English 99 times lead to spontaneous, natural conversation?
And the resistance to repetition is natural, but it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what shadowing actually is.
Okay, what is it then?
Shadowing is not a cognitive memorization exercise. It is a profound physical workout. It is about building intense muscle memory in the mouth, the tongue, the jaw, and the lips.
Oh, like a musician practicing scales?
That is a much more accurate analogy. Think about the motor cortex of your brain.
Yep.
Your mouth has spent your entire life forming the incredibly specific sounds, vowel shapes, and consonant strikes of your native language.
Right. My mouth knows how to speak my language on autopilot.
Exactly. Those physical movements are deeply entrenched. When you speak a new language, you are asking those muscles to move in entirely new, unfamiliar contortions.
You have to literally reshape your mouth.
You are asking your tongue to hit a different part of the palate. Shadowing forces the mouth to practice those specific physical movements hundreds of times until they become effortless.
Wow.
Furthermore, it bypasses the analytical brain entirely. You aren't learning the theory of English rhythm. You are physically experiencing it, feeling where the stress lands in your own chest and throat.
Okay, that makes sense. You are training the hardware, not just the software. But regarding spontaneous conversation, how does this repetition help Fizu when he's suddenly put on the spot?
Shadowing builds a phenomenon known as automaticity.
Automaticity.
Right. When phrases become fully automatic through physical repetition,
Yeah.
when your motor cortex just inherently knows how to execute the muscle movements for "I'm doing well, thank you," you no longer have to build that sentence from scratch during a stressful conversation.
Oh.
You don't have to pause, search your memory for the subject, find the verb, conjugate it, and string it together. You just pull a pre-built, fully formed block of language from your memory and deliver it.
You're stockpiling these pre-built conversational Lego bricks.
Yes, Lego bricks.
When someone says, "How are you?" you don't have to manufacture the plastic, mold the individual studs, and build the brick right there on the spot. You just reach into your bucket and pull out the fully formed "I'm doing well, thank you" brick.
And because that entire phrase is stored as a single automatic unit of meaning, complete with the physical muscle memory of how to articulate it, you completely bypass the translation bottleneck.
It takes zero RAM.
There's no cognitive load required to say it, which leaves your brain free to listen to whatever the person says next.
And looking at the specific sentences Masood chose for this shadowing exercise in the transcript, it is incredibly clever. They aren't just random, meaningless sentences like "the sky is blue" or "the cat is on the table."
Right, they're very deliberate.
They are highly specific affirmations.
The psychological layering in the material here is very intentional and quite sophisticated.
Fizu is asked to repeat, out loud, phrases like, "I am not afraid of mistakes. I speak English with confidence. I am proud of my progress."
Affirming statements.
It is doing double duty as psychological coaching. While Fizu is doing the heavy physical lifting of building the muscle memory to speak English, he is simultaneously brainwashing himself, in the best possible way, into believing he can actually succeed.
It addresses the mechanical bottleneck in the motor cortex and the psychological anxiety in the amygdala at the exact same time, using the exact same exercise.
That is amazing.
It is a highly efficient pedagogical tool.
Speaking of pedagogical tools, we have to talk about grammar.
Grammar. The scary part.
Because if there is one thing that triggers the fluency freeze faster and harder than anything else for a learner, it's grammar. You are mid-sentence, you're feeling good, and suddenly your brain stops and thinks, wait, is this present perfect or past continuous? Do I use "in the bus" or "on the bus"?
And boom, the crash happens.
How does the source material handle the terrifying beast of grammar without triggering that freeze?
What's fascinating here is what Masu completely refuses to do.
Okay, what does he refuse to do?
The source material actively avoids heavy theoretical grammar lectures. There is no point in this entire 30-day transcript where Masu pauses the conversation, pulls out a metaphorical whiteboard, and starts diagramming a sentence or explaining the rules of irregular verb conjugations.
Right, there is absolutely zero dry textbook theory.
Instead, every single piece of grammar is corrected entirely in context. It is purely functional.
Give me an example from the transcript.
Well, the primary focus, especially in the early days of the transcript, is on the past tense. When Fizu is asked to talk about what he did that morning, he predictably falls into the translation trap and says, "I wake up at 7, Ray."
Right, dropping the past tense.
Masu doesn't launch into a lecture about the past tense. He simply gently steps in and corrects it in the natural flow of the conversation. "Ah, you woke up at 7, and then what did you do?"
Oh, he just feeds him the correct building blocks in real time. I woke up, I ate, I watched, I studied.
Exactly.
And going back to our earlier point about the dropped endings, this is exactly where Masu focuses. When Fizu drops the ed and says, "I finished work," Masu just echoes it back correctly. You finished work.
The correction is immediate, highly contextual, and tied directly to Fizu's actual lived experience in that moment.
It's relevant to him.
It's not an abstract rule about verbs. It's the specific, necessary word Fizu needs right now to describe his own morning.
It's exactly like learning the mechanics of a video game.
How so?
When you play a new game, you don't sit down and read a 50-page manual about the game's underlying physics engine before you touch the controller.
No, nobody does that.
Right. You pick up the controller, you press the jump button, your character falls into a pit, you fail, and you try again. You learn the rules of gravity in the game by interacting with the environment and failing until jumping feels completely natural.
That is the essence of functional language acquisition. Functional communicative usage is prioritized far above perfect theoretical accuracy.
Right.
The ultimate goal is successful human communication, not passing a multiple-choice grammar test.
And Masu goes out of his way to make sure these contextual grammar lessons are deeply memorable. There is a fantastic moment in the text where they discuss the classic mix-up between saying, "I'm boring," versus "I'm bored."
Oh yes, the ed versus eing adjective confusion. It is incredibly common and often leads to very funny misunderstandings.
Right. And instead of explaining the grammatical difference between present participles and past participles, Masu explains the social consequences.
Which is much more effective.
He tells Fizu that if you say, "I'm boring," you are telling the world that you are not an interesting person, that you make other people fall asleep. But if you say, "I'm bored," it means you have nothing to do.
A huge difference.
Masu teaches it via this idea of a highly embarrassing social anecdote. If you walk into a party and announce, "I am boring," everyone is going to look at you very strangely.
They'll just avoid you.
Exactly. Teaching it this way makes the rule stick instantly. It's no longer a dry grammar rule, it's essential social survival.
And tying that back to the SVO framework we discussed earlier, Masu constantly guides Fizu back to simplicity. When beginners try to use complex vocabulary they aren't ready for, it drastically increases cognitive load.
Right, they try to sound too smart.
In one session, Fizu is searching for a very complex way to express his mood, and Masu stops him. He explicitly tells Fizu, instead of trying to say, "I am exceedingly delighted," just say, "I'm very happy." Simple is powerful.
Simple is powerful. I love that phrasing. It takes so much pressure off the learner. You don't have to sound like a university professor giving a lecture. You just have to be clear.
Clarity over complexity.
But that brings up a really important question about transitioning to reality. Shadowing pre-built phrases in your quiet bedroom and using simple SVO grammar with an endlessly supportive teacher like Masu, that's great in a vacuum.
It's a controlled environment.
It's a nice, safe laboratory.
Yeah.
But how does this actually apply to the chaos and unpredictability of the real world? Out there, people talk fast, they use slang, and they definitely do not stick to the script.
Bridging the gap between the safety of the laboratory and the unpredictability of the street is the ultimate test of any educational framework.
Right.
And the source text addresses this aggressively through the extensive use of highly specific, real-life situational role plays.
Okay, role plays.
They do not spend 30 days practicing abstract, generalized sentences. They practice navigating specific transactional environments.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because these aren't just generic conversations, they are targeted survival scenarios.
Yes, survival is a good word for it.
Let's really dig into some of these role plays because the mechanics of each one are totally distinct. Let's start with the restaurant scenario they do.
The restaurant scenario is a perfect example of an environment that is linguistically low complexity, but socially high pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
The vocabulary you need is very limited, but the situational stress is immense.
Exactly. You walk in, you're hungry, there's a line of impatient people behind you, the restaurant is loud, and the waiter is staring at you, waiting for an answer.
It's terrifying for a beginner.
So the transcript gives Fizu the exact, precise script to survive this high-pressure funnel. Table for one, please. I'd like still water. Can I have a few more minutes to decide? And finally, I'd like the chicken sandwich.
What they are practicing there is not just vocabulary, it is pacing.
Pacing.
Yes, learning how to buy time with phrases like, "Can I have a few more minutes?" is a vital survival skill that prevents the fluency freeze. It gives your brain a chance to catch up.
That's smart.
Then they move on to the shopping scenario, which introduces a different type of cognitive load: variables.
Yes, the shopping roleplay is full of potential variables. Asking for the fitting room. And Masu makes a very specific point here to note the regional difference between the British changing room and the American fitting room, which is a great touch of real-world nuance.
Very practical.
Then Fizu has to practice asking for a specific variable, like a medium size. He has to practice checking the price by asking, how much is this? And then cognitively processing the numerical answer he hears back, like $25. And finally, the transaction of paying with a card.
After shopping, they tackle a scenario that requires spatial processing, asking for directions.
Which is hard enough in your native language.
Exactly. Excuse me, I'm looking for the train station or the library. But the crucial part of this role play isn't asking the question. It's training the brain to process the directional response.
Oh, right. Understanding the answer.
Learning to instantly comprehend phrases like, "Go straight for 2 blocks, then turn left."
And finally, they tackle the most open-ended scenario. Networking or meeting new people. This is less scripted than ordering a sandwich.
Much less scripted.
They practice the art of introducing oneself, asking the classic anchor question, what do you do? And then trying to keep the conversation going without freezing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how human beings actually communicate, what is Fizu actually doing by memorizing these specific transactional interactions?
He's building social safety nets. These aren't just vocabulary lessons, they are social scripts.
Exactly.
If you know exactly, with 100% muscle memory certainty, how to order your coffee or buy a shirt or ask for the train station, you completely remove the cognitive load of navigating the transaction itself.
You don't have to think about it.
Right. And by doing that, you free up all of your brain space to deal with the unexpected variables. Like if the barista suddenly says they are out of almond milk or the shirt you want is on clearance.
You're touching on something crucial. All human interaction, even in our native languages, is heavily scripted.
Wait, really?
Think about your own daily life. We all rely on formulas. You do not invent a brand new, poetic, unique sentence to order your morning coffee every day.
I definitely don't.
You say, "Large, dark roast, room for cream, please." We rely on these scripts because they are cognitively highly efficient.
We are all basically just NPCs in the coffee shop of life. We're just running our dialogue trees.
Essentially, yes. By giving Fizu the exact socially acceptable formula for these interactions, Masu completely removes the fear of the unknown void.
It's safe.
Fizu isn't stepping out into chaos. He is stepping onto a well-worn, highly predictable linguistic path.
It's like handing him a map of a minefield. But, and this is a massive but, what happens when the script fails?
Because it will.
What happens when Fizu steps off that well-worn path? Because inevitably, he will. He is a beginner. He will misunderstand a question or use the wrong vocabulary word or drop the ed on a past tense verb again, and he will mess up in front of a native speaker. What then?
This raises an important question, and it is arguably the profound emotional core of the entire source text. How do we, as learners, handle mistakes?
It's the biggest hurdle.
In the transcript, Fizu is deeply, visibly concerned about this eventuality. He explicitly states that he feels embarrassed when he speaks. He worries constantly that people will laugh at him or judge him for his errors.
That fear of judgment is so powerful. It's paralyzing.
It is not just metaphorically paralyzing, it is physiologically paralyzing. In language acquisition theory, there is a very well-documented concept known as the affective filter.
Affective filter.
You can imagine it as a literal physical wall that goes up in your brain when you feel anxious, stressed, or afraid of social judgment. When that effective filter is high, when you are terrified of making a mistake, your brain's language acquisition center essentially shuts down. The amygdala takes over. Comprehensible input cannot get in to be processed, and linguistic output cannot get out.
So the fluency freeze isn't just a mechanical processing bottleneck. It can also be a total emotional lockdown.
Precisely. And Masu understands this implicitly. His philosophical approach to mistakes is repeated over and over again throughout the 30 days.
What does he say?
He insists to Fizu directly. Mistakes are not your enemy, they are your teacher. He constantly reiterates that even native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Which is true.
This constant, relentless validation is a deliberate, targeted strategy to lower Fizu's effective filter.
He is actively trying to dismantle that wall of anxiety, and he does it in a really fascinating, practical way.
How so?
He doesn't just pat Fizu on the back and say, "Don't worry." He actually gives Fizu the specific vocabulary required to talk about the worry itself.
Oh, right.
There is a whole section of the transcript where they focus on what we could call meta-vocabulary, words that describe the emotional process of learning.
Yes, Masu explicitly teaches words like nervous, confident, frustrated, rewarding, challenge, progress.
By teaching Fizu the word frustrated, Masu is handing him an incredibly powerful tool. If Fizu is in a conversation and he feels overwhelmed and his brain starts to crash, he doesn't just have to freeze in awkward silence anymore.
He has a script for it.
He can look at the person and say, "I'm frustrated." He can articulate his internal struggle in English. It instantly turns a negative, paralyzing emotion into a successful, communicative language exercise.
That is a profound pedagogical move. It strips the power away from the negative emotion.
Right.
If you can name the fear and communicate that fear in the target language, you are no longer being controlled by it.
It's empowering.
You are using the language to navigate the very difficulty of learning the language.
It's brilliant. I am nervous because I am translating in my head. Boom. That is a perfect SVO sentence. It is grammatically flawless, and it is emotionally honest.
And think about the social dynamic that creates. When you articulate that vulnerability, it immediately signals to the person you are talking to that you are a learner who is trying their best.
Right. People are generally nice.
This almost universally elicits empathy, patience, and accommodation from the native speaker, which immediately lowers the stress of the interaction, further lowering the effective filter. It's a positive feedback loop.
So bringing all of this complex material together, the mechanical translation bottleneck, the dropped endings, the SVO framework, the physical muscle memory of shadowing, the safety nets of social scripts, and the emotional reframing of mistakes, what is the ultimate roadmap here?
What's the takeaway?
Yeah. What is the core actionable takeaway for you, the listener, from these extensive sources?
The source text actually does a remarkable job of synthesizing all of this theory into what we can view as the 5 pillars of fluency.
The 5 pillars.
These are 5 distinct, actionable habits that Masu repeatedly highlights and reinforces across the 30 days of the transcript.
Let's walk through these pillars in detail. Pillar number 1. Speak every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
The pedagogical emphasis here is heavily on consistency over volume. It is biologically far more effective to speak for 5 minutes every single day than to sit down and study grammar textbooks for 5 grueling hours on a Sunday.
Because you're building muscle memory.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the text provides a very practical, immediate way to implement this. Talk to yourself. Narrate your own life out loud.
The transcript specifically suggests narrating the act of making your morning coffee. So let's think about how you, the listener, can apply this today.
Right now.
You wake up, you walk to the kitchen, you say out loud to the empty room, "I am walking to the kitchen, I am opening the fridge, I am taking out the milk is cold." Let's be honest, doing this feels completely, utterly ridiculous, doesn't it?
It feels incredibly silly, which is exactly why most adults refuse to do it. But mechanically, it is pure genius. It forces your working memory to retrieve vocabulary in real time, in physical context, but completely removes the effective filter because there is no human audience to judge you.
No anxiety.
It is essentially low-stakes, real-world shadowing of your own life.
Okay, pillar number 2. Start translating.
We have discussed the mechanics of this at length, but it remains the core mechanical fix for the fluency freeze. You must actively train your brain to think directly in the target language to eliminate the mental bottleneck.
Just skip the native language step.
When you see a dog, force yourself to just think dog. Do not allow the signal to route through your native language first.
Pillar number 3. Make mistakes.
Embrace them not as failures, but as essential data points and proof of effort. If you aren't making mistakes, you simply aren't speaking enough. The ultimate goal of language is human communication, not achieving a flawless score on a grammar test.
Which means sometimes you will inevitably drop an ed or an s, or you will accidentally tell a room full of people that you are boring instead of bored, and guess what? The world will keep spinning.
It will.
People will still understand what you meant. Pillar number 4, listen actively.
This is a crucial distinction. Active listening is not just having English radio playing softly in the background while you read a book or do the dishes.
Passive learning doesn't work.
Passive exposure does not rewire the brain. Active listening means highly focused acoustic processing. It's absorbing the specific rhythm, the intonation, and the connected speech patterns of native speakers via podcasts, videos, and music.
You have to pay attention.
It is listening with the deliberate intent to mimic the sounds. You are actively training your auditory cortex to segment the continuous stream of sound into distinct words.
And finally, pillar number 5, be patient.
Fluency does not happen in a week or even 30 days. It is a slow, literal, biological rewiring of the neural pathways in your brain.
You're building an entirely new system.
You're building new infrastructure.
Yeah.
You have to trust the process and give your biology time to adapt.
When you look at these 5 pillars all together, narrating your coffee, stopping translation, embracing errors, listening actively, and having patience, they really aren't a traditional academic study plan, are they?
No, not at all. They are a cohesive system of micro-habits.
Micro-habits.
They are deliberately designed to integrate language acquisition seamlessly into your daily life and your physical body,
Yeah.
rather than treating language as an abstract academic subject that you only interact with while sitting at a desk with a textbook.
So what does this all mean? If we look at everything we've deeply unpacked today, from the raw speak-up sessions transcript and the structured A1 framework, it means that language learning is fundamentally not a math test.
No, it isn't.
It's not about memorizing a rigid formula perfectly and getting 100% on a piece of paper. It means deliberately breaking the translation habit so your brain's working memory doesn't crash.
Right.
It means focusing on SVO simplicity so you don't drown in complex syntactic trees. It means relying on memorized real-world scripts as your social safety nets. And above all, it means completely, radically reframing how we view mistakes.
They're teachers, not enemies.
Mistakes aren't failures. They are the required stepping stones to fluency. Language is a living, breathing, messy tool used to connect with another human being.
That synthesis is spot on.
Yeah.
It is about moving from theoretical knowledge to practical execution
Yeah.
and fully accepting the messy reality that comes with it.
And I really want to remind you, the listener, that you are on your own journey of learning right now. Maybe it's a new language, like Fizu, but maybe it's a complex new software program at work, or a physical hobby, like woodworking or painting.
The rules apply everywhere.
The mechanics of learning we've discussed, the deep frustration of the freeze, the paralysis of the affective filter, the fear of making mistakes in front of others, these are universal human experiences. The framework we've explored today applies to absolutely any skill you're trying to acquire. Consistency, structural simplicity, and a genuine willingness to look a little foolish while you build the muscle memory are your absolute best tools.
The underlying neurology of learning remains the same, regardless of the subject matter.
So, to wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to chew on that builds directly on everything we've talked about regarding communication.
I love good final thought.
We've spent this entire time establishing that the ultimate goal of language is purely communication, right? If Fizu says, I wake up at 7 yesterday, instead of I woke up, the system dropped to ed to save processing power.
Yes.
But Masu still understood perfectly that the action happened in the past. The communication itself was 100% successful. So, if a mechanical mistake is perfectly understood by the listener, and that same mistake happens frequently enough across a massive population of speakers over time, at what point in human history do widespread, commonly understood mistakes simply become the brand new rules of the language?
Wow.
Because after all, the proper language we all speak today, with all its strict rules, is really just the accumulation of centuries of our ancestors' mistakes finally becoming standardized. Think about that the next time you drop an ed in a sentence. Keep learning, keep practicing, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.